day they legalized abortion, my grandma Ward was in the kitchen, my dad was in the kitchen with her, when the news came across telling them that abortion had been legalized. When my grandma heard this, she told my dad when he was 8 years old that it was the beginning of a slippery slope. His exact words. She said, "Once you start killing babies, there is no end to it. To protect the right to life, we must fight against the slippery slope that my grandma talked about. This means opposing abortion, euthanasia, and assisted suicide." As my grandma said, abortion is the beginning of the slippery slope. Abortion in common terms is taking a baby's life before birth. It is the termination of an unborn baby's life when they are still in the mother's womb. When some parents hear that their baby is going to have trouble in their life, like being mentally handicapped or have a disability, the parents don't want to hear that. The parents then have the choice whether to give the baby life or to abort the baby. My parents faced this decision when they were having me. I am happy they chose to give me life. Before I was born, my parents were told that I had a hemorrhage in my brain. I had a stroke in the womb. My parents still chose to give birth to me. The outcome of my stroke is that I have a right-sided disability. The right side of my body does not work as well as the left side of my body. Along with my physical disability, I also have a learning disability. That makes comprehension hard for me. My parents could have aborted me, but they chose not to. They chose to give me life. Abortion can be chosen really quickly once the mother or both parents know that the child would have difficulties in life. They choose to end the life of the baby they don't even know yet. The parents think that it would be an easier life for both the baby and themselves. I'm happy that my parents chose to give me life, even though I have to adapt to different ways of doing things than my siblings. I'm happy that I get to live the life that I have. This is why I want babies to live their own lives. Just like abortion being thought of as a good thing before a baby is born, euthanasia is supposedly the best thing when it comes to being close to the end of someone's life. In common terms, euthanasia is the intentional, knowingly, and directly acting to cause the death of another person. This means that someone is willing to help someone end their life and their suffering. They are willing to do this because they know that the person doesn't have much longer to live for now that they are sick, so they might as well end their life. My Uncle Bill Ward had prostate cancer. He lived with my Grandma Ward while he was sick. My grandma loved having my uncle living with her, and he loved living with my grandma. Some days were better than others. He was on chemotherapy. Uncle Bill was strong through all the struggles that his cancer threw at him. When my family and I went to visit him and my grandma, he would come out to the kitchen. He would be there to visit with us. There would be times when he would excuse himself from us to go rest because he was tired. There would be times when we would go visit on one of his bad days, and he wouldn't come out to the kitchen. He would be either in his bedroom upstairs or on the couch on the main floor. On days like those, we didn't disturb him. We would leave him alone until we left. By the end of his life, he was placed in hospice. My uncle could have been euthanized. We could have had someone end his life right away when he found out that he had cancer. That is not what he wanted for his life. We too do not want that for his life. We didn't want his life to end so fast just because he had cancer. Euthanasia can be so quick like that. Once a physician finds out that someone is sick and they know the person isn't going to get better, they could euthanize them. My family and my uncle were not those kinds of people. We wanted my uncle to be able to live his life until a natural death. Even though he went through a lot of pain, by dying naturally, my uncle gave us extra time to be with him. and he trusted us to take care of him. My uncle and his family wanted him to have a natural death without any help from someone who wouldn't have given my uncle the choice. They would have made the choice and the decision for him to kill him right from the start of his cancer. My uncle showed me that euthanasia is the wrong choice for people who are going to be sick for the rest of their lives. They shouldn't have to die just because they are sick. They should be able to live their life without someone choosing how they are going to die for them. In euthanasia, the person does not directly end their own life, but it is another person who causes the patient's death. The difference between euthanasia and assisted suicide is that in an assisted suicide, the individual will receive assistance but causes his or her own death. Assisted suicide, in common terms, and it is an intentional, knowingly, and directly providing the means of death to another person, so that person can use the means to commit suicide. This means that the person who wants to die can die with the help of a physician or someone else. They can kill themselves, but they don't do it alone. They do it with someone's help. My grandma McDermott had Parkinson's disease for 6 years. At the start of the disease, she just had a tremor in her hands. As years went on and the disease progressed, it was no longer just a tremor in her hand. She was no longer able to walk or talk as much. Her talking was very minimal, and her walking was assisted by a walker or someone helping her. The disease increased harshly, putting her in a hospital bed until she died 2 years ago. The story of my grandma can be a very good example of assisted suicide. She could have chosen to commit herself to die sooner so that she didn't have to go through the pain, but she didn't. She lived through the pain and the struggles that her disease brought upon her. Assisted suicide could have seemed like the best decision, but she chose to live until a natural death. She chose to die a natural death. Her family chose to let her live until she died a natural death. Someone who helps with assisted suicide could have looked at my grandma and said that they could have helped her end her life right from the start. She could have, with the help from someone, could have ended her life right from when she found out that she had Parkinson's, so that then she didn't have to live through the struggles and pains that the disease caused her. My grandma chose not to commit assisted suicide. She chose to live through the pains and struggles. She chose to live her life no matter what happened. She wanted to live that life with my grandpa and her family. In conclusion, every person deserves to live life to the fullest from conception to natural death. Natural death is the best choice when it comes down to deciding how do you want to die. Natural death is dying of natural causes when God is ready. Every baby from conception should be able to live life without being aborted. Every person who grows old should be able to live their life until a natural death. Every person who grows old should be able to, they should not have to think about committing assisted suicide or having the choice to be part of euthanasia. When we start slipping down that slippery slope my grandma Ward was worried about, it's hard to stop that slope. The slippery slope is a dangerous slide. Every life is precious from conception to growing old together. Thank you.